Yes, this is Mike Franklin, the property tax guy, and today I'm going to talk about the revaluation at the city of Oswego. Today is March 20th, 2024. I had a taxpayer inquire on a two-family non-owner occupied home in the city of Oswego, and they had raised his assessment significantly, over $200,000 for a um, you know, basically low-income housing. And my interest was they had a panel at the city of Oswego. They had a meeting where the assessor was there, and then the representative of the company that did the revaluation for the city, and then they had a person from the New York State Real Property Tax Services, and an individual from the county Real Property Tax Services. So I thought it might be interesting to run a question past the person from the state, and the issue I had was that if it's a non-owner occupied, you don't qualify for SCAR, and so you'd have to go to state Supreme Court. So if you wanted to appeal their opinion of value, you could talk to the assessor. You can go before the Board of Assessment Review. But the Board of Assessment Review is a panel of local people who were appointed by the same people who appointed the assessor. So sometimes it's hard to get a fair hearing there. They tend to rubber stamp the assessor, not always, but I found about maybe 90% of the time is my experience in the 32 counties that I participated in these matters in. So unfortunately, I didn't actually go to the meeting, but it was live streamed on YouTube, and I watched it. And so I have a few comments to make about what transpired there. Turns out they hired a company called GAR. Apparently, they're out of Saratoga Springs, and the city paid them $300,000 to do their revaluation. And folks up there didn't seem to like the work that was done. I think it's 6,600 parcels, might be 7,000. And I did a little calculation on that. You see here, New York State will provide the municipality with some funding to do revaluations. She said it's up to $5 per parcel, but usually it's like $3.50. Let's just call it 7,000 parcels. 300,000 divided by 7,000 equals, that's $42.86 that company charged to do the revaluation. And I don't really have an opinion about whether or not what type of job that they did for the $300,000, but there sure were a lot of upset people. Now those people come in and they really don't know anything about valuation. They don't know the ramifications of a revaluation. But apparently the average increase was 58%. One guy made a comment. He goes, "Let's see, if you divide, the total value of all parcels in the city of Oswego was like 850 million. It comes out to like 1.3 billion." And he says, "How can you, from one year to the next, be off by $500 million?" And they didn't really have a very good answer for that. If I were there and had an opportunity to speak to the people and speak to the panel, I would have tried to explain the revaluation process a little bit better than their panel did, to make them understand. And most people think that the assessor's trying to squeeze more tax money out of people, and that's just not the case. What it is that they're doing is they're taking your property and all they're establishing a value of your property and all the other properties in that municipality, adding them together. You take the value of yours divided by the total, and that's your percentage of the tax burden. They multiply that times the school budget. They multiply that times the county account, and that's what your taxes are. So if your assessment goes up, they don't get more money. If your assessment goes down, they don't get less money. It's the same. If your assessment goes up, everybody else pays less. If your assessment goes down, everybody else pays more. So the assessor is not trying to squeeze you for more money. They're not doing this revaluation to squeeze people for more money. They're doing the revaluation is because they hadn't done another one since 1997, and that's where this grave discrepancies come from, because the city had neglected to do a revaluation. Now the city already collected money from the taxpayers to do this work, and they hadn't done it since 1997. And there was one guy arguing that they should, well, a bunch of people are arguing that they should just put it back to what it was last year, and that the if the Common Council had known that this chaos would be created, they never would have voted to do it. Well, they essentially need to do it because they were paid to do it. And if you get paid to do a job and you don't do it, it's called fraud. Taxpayers or contractors that take money to do a job and don't get paid and don't do the job, they go to jail. Well, that's what's going on here. They were paid to do that job, and they hadn't done it since 1997. It needs to be done one way or another. Now, some of the people said maybe you could do it gradually and so on and so forth. And, there could be arguments for that. But the thing is, if you do it piecemeal over a course of 5 years, it creates unequals every year. So, it's best to do it in 1 year. Now, excuse me, do you need to pay this company $300,000? Again, I'm not going to. I haven't had an opportunity to evaluate the job that that the GIR did for the city of Oswego, and I'm not certain if I would be qualified to know, even if I did. But one thing I can say is that their representative, they could send somebody with a little more personality than the guy that they sent. And so whether or not he did the job properly or not, for his $300,000, I'd like to see the contract, and I'd like to see what it is that they had said that they were going to do, and to see if they actually did what they said they were going to do. And I'd also like to see if the city asked them to do what needed to be done, because maybe the city wasn't qualified to know what to ask them to do. So again, I'm not going to disparage that company, because I don't really know what kind of a job that they did. But I tell you, there's a lot of people with a lot of stories, and here's the other thing: is the state representative said that she was involved in taking a 50 parcel sample of their work to verify everything was good, and she said it was good. Well, I'll tell you, I'd like to see the data from that to see, if she actually did do a proper sampling, and maybe when you got 7,000 properties, maybe 50 parcels isn't enough. Maybe more. But I would like to see some sort of verification in her verification, so that we can see if the city of Oswego got their money's worth, and if there was a way to avoid this chaos. As far as the assessor is concerned, he said anybody has any issue, they can come talk to him, and he will take the time necessary to look into it. And that's all I can ask of an assessor. And to me, he seems like a guy who's acting in good faith, and that's all I can ask from an assessor. Again, here's what I ask from an assessor: if a taxpayer has a concern, they call the assessor. The assessor gets back to him in a timely manner, looks in the matter in good faith. If they agree, make an adjustment. If they disagree, they are transparent about why they disagree, and they explain it. And then they politely point them to their appeal options. And in some cases, I saw my favorite assessor was from Clayton. And I remember this old guy, he didn't understand what's going on. She's filling out the paperwork for him to appeal her. And that's proper customer service. And that's what it is that I'd like to see. I'd like to see this assessor in that city are in the customer service business, and I want them to treat taxpayers like customers. Now, doing these valuations, it's very imprecise. Mistakes happen. And so you've got your appeal options. You can go to the GAR people, until the end of April, I think. And by the end of April, they'll give you a decision whether or not they're making adjustments. If they don't adjust it to your satisfaction, you can go to the Board of Assessor Review and you can talk to the assessor, and maybe he'll stipulate, or maybe the bar will give you something. If they don't, then you can go to Small Claims Assessment Review. This is assuming it's a residential property, properties that qualify for SCAR. Like I say, non-owner occupied properties do not qualify for SCAR. So that's a problem. You got a $200,000 property, and your appeal option is go to the state Supreme Court. It says nobody ever does it because it doesn't make any economic sense. To take a property to the Supreme Court, it's got to be worth at least $5 million, or it just doesn't make any sense. And assessors know that, and so I just think that they're always the politicians are always crying about not enough low income housing, and then they abuse the people that provide low income housing, treat them like they're scum, slumlords, and then they don't give them any appeal option, and so they have to just take whatever the assessor gives them. And it's like, how can you budget when you don't know what your taxes are going to be? They can change them anytime they want, and you have very little for an appeal option. And so I wanted to talk to that person from the state, because they got to change the law. Small claims is small claims. It's ridiculous that a two-family non-owner occupied would not qualify for SCAR. That's so ridiculous. And I've had many examples of that where people were getting screwed. People putting an effort into trying to make things better and maybe generate some revenue, and then as soon as they make it look halfway decent, they just raise the assessment ridiculously. It's just outrageous. And and every year I talk to my assemblyman, my state senator. They don't give a damn. And our assemblyman, his property is underassessed by probably millions. He owns all this waterfront, and none of it is classified as waterfront. So there's no wonder why he doesn't want to get involved in assessment issues. But what else did we have? There were a lot of upset people. One guy was really interesting. He said he's a data researcher of some sort, and he really gave him hell, and they really didn't have any explanation. And one guy was talking about income valuation. Well, it's a single family home. They didn't do an income valuation. They did a comparable sale. So, he rambled on for a long time and for no reason. But, people don't understand this stuff. So I didn't go there to talk about a specific property valuation, because the assessor said you can just call him up and he'll work with you. So there's no point in doing it at the hearing, but a lot of the people did. But I think one of the things that people were talking about is that the elderly don't know about this stuff, don't know how to handle it, and so they have to absorb the abuse. And some of these people, their assessment more than doubled, and so we don't know exactly what that comes out to in terms of actual dollars, but it could drive some of these people out of their homes. And there's one guy who owned a Chinese calzones, he said, pretty personable guy. And he owned 4 properties, and the 2 of them went up, they doubled, and 2 of them tripled. And it's just, you're just going to run the guy out of business. Maybe he was underassessed before. It's possible. So, I don't know, perhaps it's possible that every person that spoke there was in the wrong. Maybe the GIR was in the right. I wouldn't know until I analyzed each property individually, and that's what the appeal process is for. And that's what they're saying. You can go through the appeal process. So again, as long as the assessor is responsive and looks into it in good faith, that's all I can ask him to do. And then you have your appeal options. And if you need help with your appeal options, that's when you call a guy like me. the propertytaxguy.com, and I can just take care of it for you. But I can look into it, and very quickly I can tell you whether or not you have a case. But the problem is that some of these people were saying that the revaluation systemically, top to bottom, was flawed. So that yes, you can go and you can appeal, and you can get your property fixed, but what about all the others? And what about the elderly people who can't, don't know how to do that, or just don't have the mobility to, or technological capability to deal with all this stuff. And so I can appreciate that when what they're saying is there was a 58% increase, but the commercials went down 25%, something like that. And that's what the guy with the data was saying. I don't know if I can verify all that, but the assessor acknowledged that the commercials did go down and the residentials went up significantly. And in the end, it's hard to tell how badly these people got hurt, but anyway, so I guess the only issue I have is with the state person. Did she what did she do with those 50 properties? She said that she analyzed, and she confirmed that the job was done properly. I question that, and I'd like to see her work on that. And again, I'd like to see the contract that they signed with this company for $300,000, and I'd like to see if they actually did the work. I don't know if there's anything more than that. City of Oswego. I like the assessor. He seems willing to to do what it is that he has to do from a customer service perspective, and that's really all I can ask for him. And when these municipalities have these these revals, people do tend to get up in arms. I saw one in the town of Hamilton. Everybody went crazy. They're doing one in Alberts right now. Everybody's going crazy, and whether they're justified or not, we're going to find out. But Oswego, everybody's upset right now. I don't know if they're justified in being upset. I'm going to suspect that they have some significant justification based on the number of cases and the stories that I heard. That there are issues, and then perhaps GAR didn't do such a great job. Arbitrary, that's what people were calling it. The revaluation was arbitrary, and it may very well have been. So the devil's in the details. Did they do a real valuation? They were paid, what was it, $46 a piece? Let me do that again. It was 300,000 divided by 7,000 equals, that's 4286, and I think it's actually 6,600. So 300,000 divided by 6,600 equals, it's 45. They're paid $45 per parcel for the entire city. And so did they do the job properly? And then they had a person from the county talking, and I don't really have much to say about that. Apparently she does all the tax bills, and what else? And she sent out mailers to the elderly folks. So at least they're trying to a degree. But I'd say they need to try a little harder in that regard. And the assessor said that he will. Why he would take that job is beyond me, that poor guy. But he seems like a decent guy, and he seems like he's going to do his best to do what he can to make things right for people from a customer support standpoint. And that's all I can ask the guy to do. This is Mike Franklin, the property tax guy.